The Nova Arena's crystalline dome sparkled under the light of 3 moons, its transparent walls containing the anticipation of 50,000 spectators. Crothall the Unmoved stood in the center of the combat zone, his iridescent scales reflecting patterns across the arena floor. For 3 centuries, he had remained undefeated, crushing challengers from every corner of the known galaxy. The Galactic Combat Federation had made the rules simple: survive 5 minutes against Crothall, win glory and riches beyond imagination. None had lasted more than 2. The alien warrior's ability to manipulate gravitational fields made him virtually untouchable, earning him his famous title. Another cycle, another challenge, Crothall's voice boomed through the arena's acoustic enhancers. Who dares face the unmoved? The silence that followed was familiar. Fear had become his closest companion in these moments. But today was different. A single figure stepped forward from the challenger's gate, her movements measured and controlled. Major Elena Winters of Earth's Special Combat Division stood barely half Crothall's height. She wore standard-issue combat armor, matte black with subtle blue energy lines tracing its contours. No weapons, no augmentations, nothing that could be considered an advantage against the champion's natural abilities. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel barely 2 decades ago. Their physical capabilities were considered unremarkable by most species standards. A human? Crothall's secondary breathing chambers expanded in what passed for laughter among his kind. Your species hasn't earned the right to challenge me. Return when you've evolved for another 1,000,000 years. Elena's response was unexpected: silence. She simply took her position in the starting circle, her dark eyes fixed on her opponent. The lack of reaction seemed to unsettle Crothall more than any verbal challenge could have. The arena's AI announced the commencement of the match. Crothall didn't waste time with theatrics. He immediately generated a gravitational well, strong enough to crush most beings into paste. Elena should have been pulled toward him helplessly. Instead, she moved. Not away from the gravitational pull, but with it, using the force to accelerate her movement. She spun through the air like a gymnast, landing precisely at the edge of Crothall's effective range. The champion's upper eye ridge twitched, the first sign of confusion he had shown in decades. He increased the gravity field's intensity, expecting to see the human collapse under its weight. Elena's armor creaked, but she remained standing, her breathing steady and controlled. Impossible, Crothall growled. No unaugmented being can withstand this pressure. Elena finally spoke, her voice calm despite the enormous forces pressing against her. You assume too much about human limitations. She took a step forward, then another, each movement deliberate and precise. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she continued to advance. Crothall's gravitational attacks grew more erratic, creating waves and spikes of crushing force. Yet Elena moved through them like water flowing around rocks, never fighting directly against the power, always finding the paths of least resistance. 3 minutes had passed, and the impossible was happening. The human wasn't just surviving, she was closing the distance to Crothall. The champion's legendary composure began to crack. He had never encountered an opponent who could navigate his gravitational fields with such precision. What are you? He demanded, creating a barrier of intensified gravity between them. Elena's response was measured, even as she analyzed the barrier's fluctuations. Just human. We've spent our entire history fighting against forces greater than ourselves. Gravity was our first teacher, and we learned its lessons well. The 4th minute approached, and Elena had reduced the distance to mere meters. Crothall's attacks became desperate, throwing gravitational forces in all directions. But with each attack, Elena read his patterns more clearly. Humans had evolved on a planet with constant gravity, learning to use it, work with it, understand it in ways that Crothall, born in variable gravity, never had to. As the final minute began, Elena made her move. She had mapped every nuance of Crothol's gravitational manipulation, found the microsecond gaps between his attacks. She launched herself forward, using his own gravity wells to accelerate beyond normal human speed. The crowd rose to their feet as Elena Winters did what no being had done in 3 centuries. She reached Crothol the unmoved. Her armor-enhanced fist connected with his central nervous cluster, a precise strike that required intimate knowledge of his species' biology. The champion staggered, his gravitational control wavering for the first time in living memory. The match timer reached 0, and the arena erupted in chaos. Elena stood straight, showing no signs of fatigue, while Crothol struggled to process what had just occurred. The human hadn't just survived, she had demonstrated mastery over the very force he had thought was his alone to command. As medical drones rushed to attend to the champion's injury, Elena turned to leave the arena, but Crothol's voice stopped her. "Wait," he called, his tone carrying something new, respect. "How did you know where to strike?" Elena paused at the exit. "We studied every recording of your matches, analyzed your physiology, and prepared for months. Humans don't just fight, we learn, we adapt, we overcome. That's what makes us dangerous." As she disappeared through the Challenger's Gate, the galaxy's greatest warriors sat in stunned silence, beginning to understand that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't strength or technology, it was their relentless drive to push beyond their limitations. The aftermath of Elena's victory sent shockwaves through the Galactic Combat Federation. In the prestigious Hall of Champions, the Council of Nine convened an emergency session. Holographic displays showed the battle from every angle, as xenobiologists and combat analysts argued over what they had witnessed. "Impossible," thundered Representative Vox for 27, his crystalline form vibrating with agitation. "The human must have used illegal augmentations. No organic being can withstand those gravitational pressures." The chief medical officer, Dr. Ziwexta, a being of pure energy contained within an environmental suit, brought up the post-match scans. "All readings confirm, Major Winters is completely unmodified. Her only advantage was that armor, which merely protected against environmental damage. The feat was purely biological and cognitive." In the medical wing, Crothol underwent treatment for his injured nerve cluster. The proud champion had refused all visitors except one, Elena Winters. She sat across from him, both warriors studying each other with newfound respect. "You knew about my species' vulnerable points," Crothol stated, his translator conveying curiosity rather than accusation. "Yet you waited until the last moment to strike. Why?" Elena's lips curved into a slight smile. "The point wasn't to hurt you, champion. It was to demonstrate something larger. Humanity isn't just another species seeking glory in the arena. We're here to change the game entirely." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Marcus Chen, Earth's representative to the Federation. His usually stoic face showed signs of both pride and concern. "Major, we have a situation. Your victory has sparked a galaxy-wide debate about human potential. Some are calling for our immediate inclusion in the High Council. Others—" He paused, his expression darkening. "Others are demanding we be classified as a potential threat to galactic stability." Elena stood, her posture reflecting years of military discipline. "Then we'll face those challenges too, sir. Just like we always have." The next day, the Nova Arena was packed beyond capacity. Beings from across the galaxy had arrived to witness what the news networks were calling the revelation. Elena stood before the Council of Nine, her black armor gleaming under the artificial lights. "Explain to us," demanded High Counselor Zareth, their tentacles writhing with curiosity, "how your species developed such extraordinary adaptability. Our records show your world has only achieved space flight recently." Elena's response echoed through the silent arena. "Precisely because of our limitations, not despite them. Humans weren't born with natural weapons or defenses. We couldn't fly, breathe underwater, or manipulate gravity. Everything we achieved, we had to earn through understanding, innovation, and sheer determination. She activated a holographic display, showing Earth's history. We learned to swim by studying fish, learned to fly by understanding birds, and now we're learning to manipulate gravity by understanding beings like Crothall. Our greatest strength isn't any physical attribute, it's our ability to learn, adapt, and evolve our methods. From his observation pod, Crothall watched with growing fascination. 3 centuries of combat experience had taught him to recognize watershed moments in galactic history. This was one of them. The council chambers erupted in debate. Some members saw the potential for unprecedented advancement through human collaboration. Others warned of the dangers of a species that could so quickly master and counter the natural advantages of others. Elena's voice cut through the chaos. You fear what we might become, but consider instead what we could accomplish together. Humanity's adaptability combined with the natural gifts of other species? We could solve problems that have plagued our civilizations for millennia. As if to emphasize her point, she turned to Crothall. Champion, would you be willing to teach me more about gravitational manipulation? In return, I can show you how humans learn to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. The chamber fell silent. Such an exchange between champions was unprecedented. Crothall's response would set the tone for future human-alien relations. The champion rose, his massive form casting a shadow across the chamber. 3 centuries I remained undefeated, believing I had mastered my art completely. Yesterday, a human showed me how much more there is to learn. He turned to the council. I accept this exchange, and I recommend we all do the same. The humans don't just fight differently, they think differently. That's not a threat, it's an opportunity. High Counselor Zaretha's tentacles rippled with what their species considered laughter. Well spoken, champion. Major Winters, it seems you've won more than just a combat victory. You've opened a door that cannot be closed. As Elena left the chamber that day, messages were already spreading across the galaxy. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage not with overwhelming force or advanced technology, but with something far more powerful, the ability to understand, adapt, and transform limitations into strengths. The age of human isolation was over, and a new era of collaborative evolution was about to begin. 1 month after the historic match, the Nova Arena had been transformed into a joint training facility. Elena and Crothall's collaboration had inspired a wave of cross-species training programs, but not everyone welcomed this rapid change. In the facility's gravity chamber, Elena hovered in a field of intense gravitational fluctuations, her movements becoming more precise with each session. Crothall observed from the control panel, adjusting the fields with subtle manipulations of his natural abilities. Your progress is disturbing, he admitted, creating a complex pattern of gravitational waves. What took my species generations to master, you're grasping in weeks. Elena navigated through the invisible currents, her body responding to forces that would crush most beings. We're not learning to generate these fields, we're learning to understand them. There's a difference. Their session was interrupted by a priority alert. Admiral Chen's hologram materialized in the chamber, his expression grim. Major, we have a situation. The Drachnid Confederation has issued a challenge. They're sending their champion, Vorkath, to prove that your victory was a fluke. The news spread quickly through the facility. The Drachnids were known for their biological warfare capabilities, their champions notorious for secreting deadly toxins during combat. They had abstained from arena combat for centuries, claiming it was beneath them. They're scared, Crothall observed, deactivating the gravity fields. Your victory showed that humans can adapt to any natural advantage. They want to prove their biological superiority before you learn to counter that too. Elena's expression remained neutral, but her mind was already analyzing the challenge. Tell me about Drachnid biology. The next week passed in intense preparation. Elena spent hours in the xenobiology labs, studying drachnid physiological data. She trained in sealed environments, facing simulated toxins. The human approach to combat continued to fascinate other species. Instead of relying on natural defenses or technological solutions, they sought to understand their opponents at the most fundamental level. The day of the challenge arrived. The arena was packed even tighter than before, with new security measures in place to protect spectators from potential toxic exposure. Vorkath entered first, his chitinous armor gleaming with an oily sheen that betrayed the deadly compounds beneath. The Drachnid champion stood 3 meters tall, his segmented body rippling with lethal grace. "Human," his translator crackled, "your species' brief moment of glory ends today. We will remind the galaxy that natural evolution trumps adaptability." Elena entered wearing what appeared to be standard armor, but those who looked closely noticed subtle modifications. The crowd murmured, had humans already developed countermeasures to drachnid toxins? The match began with explosive violence. Vorkath moved with devastating speed, his outer shell venting clouds of neurotoxins. The arena's environmental systems worked overtime to contain the deadly mist. But Elena didn't retreat. She moved through the toxic clouds with precise movements, her armor's external sensors mapping the concentration patterns. Each burst of toxins revealed more about Vorkath's biology, his attack patterns, the way his species had evolved to weaponize their own biochemistry. "Impossible!" Vorkath roared, increasing the potency of his toxins. "No defense can adapt this quickly." Elena's voice carried clearly through her armor. "We're not trying to defend against your toxins. We're learning how they work, how you think, how you fight. Humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our strength, it's our understanding." The turning point came 3 minutes into the match. Elena had mapped every pattern in Vorkath's toxic dispersal, identified the millisecond delay between his neural command and the toxin release. She moved inside his guard, striking precise points that disrupted his biochemical channels. Vorkath's toxic clouds thinned, then stopped completely. The Drachnid champion stood frozen, his own biological weapons temporarily neutralized by strikes that demonstrated an impossible understanding of his species' nervous system. "How?" he demanded, his translator struggling to convey his shock. "These weaknesses, they were unknown even to us." Elena disengaged, maintaining a respectful distance. "Because you never had to look for them. Natural advantages can become limitations if you rely on them too heavily. Humanity had to study everything, question everything, because we couldn't take any ability for granted." The match ended not with a knockout, but with a revelation. Vorkath, the pride of the Drachnid Confederation, had been countered not by superior strength or technology, but by understanding. The implication sent ripples of unease and excitement through the galactic community. In the observation deck, Admiral Chen watched with a mixture of pride and concern. Humanity's rapid adaptation was proving to be both a bridge and a barrier. Some species saw the potential for unprecedented advancement through collaboration. Others saw a threat that needed to be contained before it grew too powerful. The question hanging in the air was clear: would humanity's gift for understanding unite the galaxy or tear it apart? The answer would depend not just on human adaptability, but on their wisdom in using this power that had so suddenly thrust them into the galactic spotlight. The Galactic Security Council called an emergency session 3 months after Elena's victories. Representatives from 30 dominant species gathered in the ancient Chamber of Consensus, their debate focusing on a single question: was humanity's rapid adaptation rate a threat to galactic stability? Elena stood before them, now joined by Crothul and, surprisingly, Vorkath. The 3 champions represented a transformation in galactic combat philosophy that had implications far beyond the arena. "The humans don't just learn our abilities," Vorkath addressed the council, his translator conveying urgency. "They understand them better than we do. In 3 months, they've developed training programs that have improved drachnid toxin control by 40%. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. High Counselor Zaretha's tentacles twisted in agitation. This unprecedented rate of advancement cannot be allowed to continue unchecked. We propose restrictions on human access to xenobiological data. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady. With respect, Counselor, you're missing the point. We're not here to steal abilities or replicate them. We're here to understand them, to help every species reach their full potential. She activated a holographic display showing training results from the Nova facility. Crothal's gravitational control has increased in precision by 60% since we began collaborating. Vorkatha's species has discovered new applications for their biochemistry in medical treatment. This isn't about humans becoming superior, it's about all of us evolving together. The Arcturian representative, a being of pure light, pulsed with skepticism. And when you understand all our strengths and weaknesses? What then? Then we face the real challenges, Elena replied. There are threats beyond our galaxy that will require all our combined abilities. The void storms at the galactic edge are expanding. The quantum anomalies in the Carina sector are multiplying. These are problems no single species can solve alone. The chamber fell silent as classified images appeared on the display, mysterious phenomena that had resisted all attempts at understanding. Phenomena that threatened all spacefaring civilizations equally. Crothall moved to stand beside Elena. I was like you, council members. I feared what I didn't understand. But the humans don't seek to dominate, they seek to comprehend. Their greatest victory isn't in combat, but in showing us how much more we all have to learn. A new voice entered the debate. Admiral Chen stepped forward, carrying data crystals. We propose a new initiative, the Galactic Exchange Program. Every species sharing their knowledge, their abilities, their perspectives. Not just humans learning from others, but every civilization learning from each other. The council chambers buzzed with discussion. The idea was revolutionary, and terrifying. Centuries of carefully maintained species segregation and power balance would be transformed. And if we refuse, the Drachnid Chancellor challenged. If we choose to protect our biological secrets? Elena's response was measured but firm. Then you'll stagnate. Evolution doesn't stop because we're comfortable. The species that survive aren't the strongest or the most specialized, they're the ones that can adapt to change. The debate raged for hours. Old alliances fractured and new ones formed as the implications became clear. Humanity hadn't just changed the rules of combat, they'd changed the rules of galactic civilization itself. Finally, High Counselor Zareth raised their primary tentacle for silence. We face a choice between comfortable stagnation and uncomfortable growth. The humans have shown us that understanding transcends physical limitations. Perhaps it's time we all learn to adapt. The vote that followed was close, but the outcome was clear. The Galactic Exchange Program would proceed, with the Nova facility as its headquarters. As Elena left the chamber, she found Crothall waiting. You knew this would happen, he said, not a question but a statement. From the first moment in the arena, this was your real victory. Elena smiled. Humanity's greatest battles were never won through force alone. We had to learn, to understand, to bring people together. That's how we survived on Earth, and that's how we'll thrive among the stars. The news spread across the galaxy, a new age of collaboration and shared evolution had begun. Some celebrated, others prepared for resistance, but all knew that there was no going back. The universe had changed, not through war or technological superiority, but through the simple, unstoppable power of understanding. 1 year after the establishment of the Galactic Exchange Program, the Nova facility had become unrecognizable. The combat arena had evolved into a vast learning center, where beings from across the galaxy shared knowledge and abilities. Elena stood at the observation deck, watching a young Drachnid scientist teaching a group of humans about biological synthesis while a human physicist explained quantum entanglement principles to fascinated Arcturians. The facility's success had exceeded even the most optimistic predictions. Species that had been locked in millennia of competition were now collaborating on solutions to galaxy-wide threats. The first major breakthrough came in the Carina sector, where a combined team using human analytical methods and Arcturian energy manipulation had successfully stabilized a quantum anomaly. "Sometimes I wonder if this was your plan all along," Crothall said, joining Elena at the window. His gravitational control had become so precise he could now perform microsurgery. "To unite us all through understanding rather than force." Elena watched as a holographic alert appeared, showing the latest data from the Void Storm front. The mysterious phenomenon that had threatened the galaxy's edge for centuries was finally beginning to yield its secrets to their combined research. "Not a plan," she replied. "An hope. Humanity learned long ago that our greatest achievements came not from conquering others, but from learning from them." The chamber's doors opened to admit Admiral Chen, accompanied by the newly formed Galactic Unity Council. The old power structures had given way to a more collaborative approach, with representation based on contribution rather than military might. "Major Winters," the Admiral began, "we've received a signal from beyond the galactic barrier. It appears to be artificial." The news silenced the room. In all their recorded history, no civilization had detected signs of life from outside the galaxy. The implications were staggering. "The signal contains complex mathematical sequences," continued Vorkath, now head of the Xenobiology Research Division. "But it's the pattern that's fascinating. It's adaptive, changing based on how we interact with it." Elena studied the data streams. The signal wasn't just a message, it was an invitation. An intelligence testing their ability to understand, to adapt, to collaborate. Everything they had learned in the past year had prepared them for this moment. "We're ready," she said, looking at the assembled representatives of a united galaxy. "Not because we're stronger or smarter than before, but because we finally understand that our differences are our greatest strength." Crothall nodded, his once proud warrior stance now balanced with scholarly wisdom. "The humans taught us that true power lies not in dominating others, but in understanding them. Perhaps that was the test all along." As preparations began for humanity's greatest challenge yet, Elena reflected on how far they had come. The arena victories that had started this journey seemed distant now, replaced by something far more significant, the proof that understanding could bridge any gap, overcome any obstacle, and unite even the most diverse beings in the cosmos. The signal pulsed on their screens, a reminder that the universe held endless mysteries waiting to be understood. But they would face them together, each species contributing their unique perspective to a greater whole. The age of isolation was over. The age of understanding had begun. In the end, humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy wasn't their adaptability or their combat prowess. It was their demonstration that the path to advancement lay not in perfecting one's own abilities, but in learning from others. As the combined fleet prepared to venture beyond the galactic barrier, they carried with them not weapons of war, but tools of understanding. The next chapter of galactic history was about to begin, written not by conquerors or warriors, but by beings united in their quest to understand the universe and each other. Elena Winters had started this journey in an arena, proving that a single human could adapt to any challenge. She would end it among the stars, proving that together, they could adapt to anything the universe might throw at them. The signal beckoned, and a united galaxy answered, ready to face whatever lay beyond with their greatest weapon, understanding.